All right, we'll start here. And we kind of spoke about this a little bit in panel one. But I'd love for we got questions coming in, but I'm going to continue with the question I just had. What are some of the growing pains that you went through during your time in the house?
Yeah, one growing pain that I had was specifically like getting homesick and like not knowing how to cope with that, because that was like my first time being away, and I wasn't someone that was like hanging out with my family that much beforehand. But going from seeing people every day to like not seeing them at all, and kind of going through things that you would kind of really want to talk to your parents about or confide in your parents about, you don't have that opportunity. So that was like one growing pain that I had. And one way I overcame it was just being more open with my resident directors, but also being really open with my host families. So like host family weekends became something I really look forward to, and we had like very honest dialogues about things, which did help. Like something I said earlier before about like that duality of like going, like my parents combined made like 30K a year. So going from that environment to where your host family makes multiple millions a year, and like living in that environment. So like we would have honest conversations and honest dialogues about that.
I'd say for me, one of the biggest growing pains was, you know, the physical or like the sports requirement. It wasn't necessarily a requirement, but my freshman and sophomore year, me and Rodney, we worked the system. We volunteered at the local congregational church where they had the youth group. We did that for 2 years straight. We did some great stuff over there, but then by junior year, we were told you can't do that anymore. You need to figure out a sport. We didn't want to play football because we weren't ready to, break limbs or anything like that. We weren't down with that. So then my host parents said, why don't you do crew? And I'm like, what's crew? And, I ended up rowing for the next 2 years. But the tough thing was like, coming from Mount Vernon where it's my parents did their best to keep me out of trouble by keeping me in the house all the time. So I wasn't as, physically gifted as other people or physically fit as other people. So trying to get around that in a town that's really big on football and soccer and lacrosse and all these things, I had to like kind of step my game up in that way, which was difficult. A lot of these kids have been playing Pop Warner football and playing soccer since they've been in elementary school, and I didn't have any of those resources in the schools that I had. So that was a high bar that I had to hit.
Definitely. Thank you so much, David. And I'm going to continue to the next question just for the sake of time because we got some good questions coming in. Um, how do you want to see the towns change that host the ABC programs?
I have a thought. As an educator, we're doing a lot of work around and abolitionist teaching, anti-racist education, and implicit bias training. So I think that the board members and host families need to have like consultants come in and do this kind of training so that they don't unintentionally harm the students that are coming into their home. So there could be things that a host family or board member says that is like, you know, as a child, you might not realize how hurtful or impactful it was. But I do think that training is going to be so necessary in order if people want to change. And it's really important that people's hearts and minds begin to change, not just opening your home, but really getting a chance to understand who someone is and understand your own bias as you're coming in. As you're
Yeah.
coming in to be like a host family, or as you're in a as a board member, or as you step into the ABC house, there's some training that has to happen.
Yeah.
Honestly, also to go off that, I feel like the teachers of the school districts and stuff also need that training as well. I know personally in New Canaan, I was doing a lot of my own sensitivity training towards my teachers and stuff like that. that's something that the school districts need to really buy in on and actually have seminars dedicated to teachers, to people who actually want to understand and grow on that topic, open for them to actually participate in.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I want to keep it going. These questions are coming in good, so I want to keep it going. Angelica, you made a great point about sticking together, which I loved. And in my experience, talking from my experience, I felt as though boys in the program, we tended to not interact in school. And I would argue that it stemmed from this feeling of machismo, right? Which is a Spanish term for strong, aggressive, masculine pride. We felt like we had to do like our own thing in school. How do you believe sticking together benefited you all as scholars in the Girls' House?
I mean, we talk almost every day. So, just being able to support one another academically, it also eliminated a lot of that tension that you face within the ABC program, that kind of pressure to outperform one another constantly. It also, just allows you to kind of grow as a young woman. And there's so much value in women supporting women specifically, especially women of color, because there is so many negative outside influences towards us. I could not tell you, the girls in my house really became like my sisters. They are my rock. Aside from just, day to day, hey, how are you? We share networks and we share job postings and we share whatever else the case may be. Boy drama, this drama, work drama, anything. And there's so much value in that. And I think, really emphasizing the importance of that and starting and helping build that relationship, especially, I mean, a lot of that came from our resident directors as well. They instilled that value in us in terms of, you guys are a team and you have to perform like a team, and you look out for each other. If someone forgets to do their chore, you remind them, because at the end of the day, we are all we got, right?
Yeah, and I love that. And I think before we go on to our next question, it's important, I feel, based on my experiences, and I know that a lot of scholars that I attended school with will feel the same way. We have to work to, as we're talking about race and these other things, we have to also break down these systems of patriarchy, as you talked about. It's important all around, and we have to make sure that we share that, so thank you so much. Emerson, I'm actually going to dish off a question to you. What can resident directors do to make a more welcoming and like a home-like atmosphere? It sounded good that, the cooks, they gave you guys an opportunity to kind of invoke your own culture in terms of food, but specifically with resident directors, how do you feel they can make a more welcoming home-like atmosphere?
Absolutely. So for us, I had two sets of resident directors while I was there. So the first set I had, one of them was a teacher at Staples, and he did a phenomenal job of making sure that we knew all of the faculty. Like, everyone knew us. And at first, like, you kind of, as a student, it's kind of embarrassing, right? You're walking in the hallway and your classmates aren't stopping to say hi to you, but every teacher that sees you is like, hey, how are you? And, it kind of throws you for a loop. But it helped later on in the program, because then my junior year, when I'm sitting down thinking about colleges and thinking about recommendations, right, these are the first people willing to help out. And these are the first people willing to throw me in someone else's direction that might be a better look. So when I applied to like maybe 24 colleges. So like, oh, that person's an alum from there. I'm going to connect you with them. Just things that you don't really think of in that capacity. In terms of my second set of resident directors, that was better in terms of the house vibe, because both of them were Black. So we had like 90s night, 90s R&B night, which we played as safe of songs as we could. But, like, we're all hanging out in the living room, jamming, and so creating that environment where like we can all hang out, we can all just be one with each other and have open dialogue is the best, right? And it has to be organic. You can't really force it. And I think that becomes the issue for a lot of scholars. Especially because, you start off in the program, you're kind of rocky, you're not sure where you fit, or like you have all these insecurities that you're really trying to deal with. And then someone's trying to force you to talk about those insecurities, the very thing that you're trying to run away from, right? So you can't really press that. right? You can't impress upon them, talk to me when they don't want to talk. But if you create the space where now we're all hanging out every Friday, one random Friday, that person might spill their soul to you, or have a watershed moment and tell you everything that they're going through. And that's how it was for us in our house.
That's great. I want to ask, I'm going to kind of shift around to different people to give different panelists an option to answer some questions. So I'll direct it to either Leah or Demisi. What advice, and this is coming from my sister, I appreciate my family for joining in, by the way. What advice would you give a youth/family either interested in ABC or about to enter as a new ABC scholar? Either one, feel free.
I think it's really important for, if you're like thinking about going into the program, to connect with alumni or current scholars within the program that you're thinking about, just so that you can manage your expectations, because I feel like a better chance does do like summer orientation and events like that for scholars going into the program, but I feel like it'd be most helpful for them to speak to people who are currently going through it, so they can get a sense of the full experience, because there's only so much that ABC can prepare you for. And then you actually walk into these environments and you're like blindsided by some of the things that you experience. So I think my biggest word of advice is to try to connect with someone that's in the program of your interest, or the one that you're placed in if you end up doing it. And also like work hard, you belong there. That's the other thing.
I love that. Yeah, you have to make sure that you understand that you earned your spot. And Jelani spoke about that at the very beginning. We all earned our spots and earned our positions in this program. And it's very important that at the beginning of you joining a program like that, that's instilled at the very beginning. And I've spoken about that before, so I really appreciate you bringing that up. David, my brother, I have a question for you. What are some things, and this is coming from someone who sounds like they're from a part of a news outlet, which I think is a great, I'm really glad that this person joined. What are some of the things that a local news outlet could do to help freshman ABC scholars arriving in their new town?
Wow, what a question.
Yeah.
Because I would have never thought about, the newspaper or the local news, really impacting this. But
it sounds like they do want to be of impact, though, right? So now that I guess,
right.
It's an interesting question.
Because there's two parts to that, or there's two sides to that. Because, as we were saying before with Osaze, like, you come into the school, people think they already know you, you don't have a chance to, some people might want to run away from who they were, where they're coming from. You never know. Or some people, want to play up certain things or not. Is having that necessarily the best thing? If like they're being interviewed and an article comes out before school starts, are the kids really reading it? Who's actually reading those articles? You know what I mean? So I think right now, I'd say I'm not exactly sure where journalists and journalism comes in currently. I know that when I was in ABC, we were featured a few times in a local newspaper. They just did like a standard article about us, the boys. They took a picture of me, took a picture of Rodney, as incoming freshmen. But they asked questions of the other boys in the house. We were mostly featured for the MLK Day speeches that we gave. And then I guess I got lucky enough my photo was used for our graduation, our high school graduation. So I think right now, if anything, educating the town about what ABC is, its origins, and why it's in your town, I think would be the most important thing. Let's not worry about the freshmen right now, but if anything, at least educating the town about what ABC is going to help everybody. But that includes the incoming freshmen.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's important that you get the stories from the students themselves, and that we create this kind of environment where students feel like they can say the truth, right, without feeling like it's going to work against them, or because obviously the community is supporting these programs, and you want to make sure that you don't want to be a part of the community. You want to make sure that that's not portrayed, but you want to make sure that those news outlets really do support you.
Right, and you
Denise,
also have to
Daryl,
remember that, sorry, one thing. You
Who's
also
up?
have to remember that the demographics of a town changes. New Canaan has changed many times over since I graduated, even since you graduated. So
Correct.
consistent education about the program, how it's changed, new resident directors, new tutors, new initiatives that they're running, anything like that. Also, when the fundraisers are and what that's going to be about, you know, all those things will help the town understand that not only is this a part of your town, but you should be involved in this thing. You know, I think that's
I like
very important.
I like that.
Correct.
William, did you want to chime in?
I did. I did want to chime in because it's great that the local press wants to highlight incoming scholars, but let's not forget that it takes a few months, maybe even a year, for some of these younger scholars to get acclimated to a new town, to the rigors of their to the demands that we have, extracurriculars and academically. So maybe when second semester, when these scholars are sort of in town, or they might have played sports, or they might have been in the school a little longer, then we can highlight the program and these scholars.
Perfect. I absolutely agree, because there's no real way that you can know about a scholar's experience off of a month or even a couple of weeks. So I absolutely agree with that as well. Question for you, Demisi. As a resident tutor, I often found the social events, volunteering, get-togethers were a bit forced. Did you feel as ABC students that you had a say in how you gathered as students? Would you be happier if you had a say in planning these things?
As far as fundraising events?
So it sounds like, yeah, well, fundraising is definitely a part of it, right? But what it sounds is like volunteering, things of that sort that maybe resident directors or the board may have requested for ABC scholars to do. So I'm guessing if you had any experiences like that, do you feel like you would have been happier in having more of a say? Did any experiences like that feel forced?
Yeah, there are definitely a few that, you know, we were obligated to do and show up for as a house. But there were, I would say for myself, I, you know, volunteered my own time to the Boys and Girls Club. There were things that, you know, I had a bit of control in giving my time to that actually interests me and allowed me to, you know, be engaged and be out of the house and, you know, making connections with people and, you know, the kids of the town. But yeah, there were definitely moments where, you know, it was like, all right, guys, like we have to wake up super early in the morning and, you know, go down and, you know, do this food drive or, you know, things like that. But, you know, we made it, because we were all together, we made it, it made it easier for us as the girls, as the house.
And I think that's great, but I think it's also important to see what students might actually be passionate in and how they do want to give back to their communities and maybe even more how they want to incorporate their own form of culture and where they're from into the community, right? I feel like not only could it help the scholars, but it could help the community become more aware, especially since we're talking about a lot of these white spaces. So thank you so much for that, Demisi. I have a question as well, and you know, reflecting on, you know, getting older and, you know, reflecting on my personal ABC experience, I myself believe our scholars could have been better allies to neighboring community school programs. What do you think can be done to cultivate more of a relationship between houses?
I'm happy you said that, because I feel like my senior year was the first year that I know of where we actually branched out and met other houses around Connecticut. We all got together. I think we like awarded somebody something and so on and so forth. I did not know that that continued since I left. You know, I'm happy to see that it has, because I feel like I did miss out on, you know, the other people within the state that were going through the same things that I was going through. I think that we need to encourage the resident directors to have their own network and talk with each other. And then on top of that, schedule meetings between the houses. You know, it doesn't have to be once a year like mine was. It can be multiple times a year. You can check in before winter break or check in before spring break or something like that. But it's very clear to me from what I'm seeing here, which makes me really happy, is that you guys have really built up a network of people that understand what we've gone through. That's so important and so special. And I wish that I had that, you know, but, you know, I'm here, life goes on, it's cool, and I'm happy to have you guys here now. But I think we need to encourage the resident directors to network with the other houses and have some events where the kids can mingle and so on. I went to the Guilford prom my senior year. I didn't know Guilford, Connecticut was a place, to be honest, you know, but I can do that. I'm friends with some of them on Facebook and this and that. You know, I love to see this connection and this network that we've created of these like just talented people that all have been through this one specific thing. It really brings us together.
Before Jelani comes back on, you already know I need a woman of color. Go ahead, do it.
My recommendations outside of the resident directors would be, this is an opportunity for ABC National to definitely step in. They are very hands-off with CSP programs, extremely hands-off with, you know, they send one representative once a year and call it a day. This is absolutely an opportunity for ABC National to host local events in these states, not in the city, because we can't go there after school, okay? We have stuff we need to do in Connecticut. Definitely, you know, facilitate, organize events like that. It's also an opportunity for board members to come together, you know, even if there's like an overarching Connecticut CSP board where you send 2 representatives from your individual board and you guys can discuss, you know, statewide initiatives where every house is participating. I also think it comes from, again, instilling these values in the scholars as early as possible, really showing them that they are a part of a larger community. And it's hard as a 14-year-old to be like, I have to now be worried about 45 other kids. But as an adult, that would have been so much more beneficial to have. But this is definitely an opportunity for ABC National to kind of get their foot back in the game with CSP programs.
And
I got you.
I totally agree with that. And one thing I also wanted to say is I feel like a lot of our experience that we have or that we had, we could actually bring to the table and we could actually benefit each other. You know, I feel as though if I had knew more about the women of color experiences in the CSP programs, like I feel like I would have just become so much more knowledgeable and knew how to navigate school better. And also one big thing that I want to say is being knowledgeable about these stuff before going to college and wherever you choose to do after high school. Because it's really important that we're knowledgeable about these conversations, that we are, again, going back to what I said before about respecting women, but then also knowing about when we get out of these spaces where we may not talk a lot about race, that we know how to approach a world where we can talk about race and we can bring these topics of concern. Not to say that we shouldn't be talking about it during the program, right? But the voices, and I'm sure a lot of you can relate, the voice that you get is almost stronger as you come out of these sorts of programs, and you feel like you really have a voice in society. So again, I just want to thank you all so much. We didn't have time to go through all of the questions, but I feel like we got a good a good little gist of them. And one thing that I want to say, and you'll hear me say this throughout the entire weekend, is this is a starting point, and now it's up to us to see what we can do to go back into these communities and to mentor the youth and to be able to give back as much as we can, because we don't want our experiences to be the same as theirs, right? We want theirs to be so much better. So thank you so much to all of the panelists, and I'll go ahead and pass it off to Jelani.
Can I say one thing before you conclude,
you got
Jelani?
10 seconds.
All right. So there was a former RD that said it was really hard to organize events between the houses because of the school schedules. And I think there's a couple ways to get at this. Is one, not all of the scholars from each house need to be at each of these events. And I know that they're, differing schedules. So like if you can get a couple scholars from each house at an event, I think that's great. And then also including the scholars in that planning of these events, because that was one place where it kind of felt forced, was like, you need to connect with the other house. And it's like, well what are we going to do during this time? And like, can we have a say in what we're doing during this time?